Okay, make sure you turn to 11.6 study guide. You're on the study guide side. We're doing similar solids. This side should be pretty easy because we've done similar figures, and the only difference between this and similar figures is that there's a third dimension. But because we're doing proportions, you still only need to use 2 dimensions. So we're going to match up the corresponding parts, which means we might match up the length with the length, or the width with the width, or a height with a height. So just like I did with the corresponding parts, I like to underline parts that go together. The 6 and the 4 are corresponding. They're in the same position because they're turned the same direction on the 2 different shapes. Now, what I don't want to do is if there's a square bottom, I don't want to circle 6 and 4 again because any square is similar. So you want to make sure that that's not your 2 parts. You want to do something from the base and the height. You want to make sure it's 2 different dimensions that you're using. So I'm going to use the height 15 and the height 10. And from that, remember we used proportions when we did our similar figures. We're going to do the same thing with our similar solids. So when we set it up, it doesn't matter which one you pick with, start with the 15 or the 6. I always like to start on the left. So let's say we put the 15 first, and that corresponds with the 10. That means I come back to the first one and I set up 6 corresponds with 4. So I've made my 2 ratios and it formed a proportion. So what we're doing here is determining whether or not it is similar. We're going to do those cross products where you do 10 times 6 and you get 60, and then you crisscross this way and cross multiply. 15 times 4 is 60. So if they're similar solids, they will be a proportion. They will make a proportion. They'll be proportional. So then yes, that's a similar solid. Okay, on this one again, we're going to pick, since it's not a square, it doesn't matter which one we pick, we're going to pick 2. So I'm going to pick 16 going with 4, and I'm going to pick 22 going with 5.5 because it's not a square, so that works out better than if it was a square. You don't ever want to use a square, 2 sides from a square. 14 over 6. 4 over 6 if I go this way to that way. And then the other one is 5.5 over, over 22. I'm going to cross multiply this way. I get 88. And I'm going to cross multiply this way and I get 88. And this one would be a yes. So that one is similar as well. Alright, then I'm going to come down here. Once I've just determined if they're similar, that's one of the things you're going to have to do with them. The other one will be to find missing measures. If you know they're similar, we can set up a proportion to find our missing measures. So again, dimensions that go together. Radius goes with radius, height goes with height. So I'm going to put x going over 2, come back to this shape since you started there. That is a 0.4 going over 0.5, and when you solve your proportions, you will show me the equation part. Multiply this way, you get 0.8. You don't have to show this part where you divide by 0.5 on both sides. You'll just know that you need to do that. 0.8 divided by 0.5 is 1.6, and the units are feet. Okay, again, we have a cone. There's 2 heights. There's 2 radii. When I set it up, let's start with the 8.4, going with the 10.5. On the other side, I've got 16 going with x. I'm going to cross multiply and I get 8.4x. I'm going to cross multiply this way and I get 168. You can divide both sides by 8.4. You can either show it or not. I don't care on that last step. When you divide both sides by 8.4, you will get 20 inches. Okay, so that's part 1 of our similar solids. So when you have problems on your homework where you have to decide if it's a yes or a no, you will set up the proportion, you will show your cross products and put yes or no. When you're showing your work for the ones with the missing side length, you'll show your proportion, the equation that you get, The part where you show the division is optional, and then make sure you answer and then label it correctly.